Alrighty, here we are, and it's time for you to get started. In this video, I'm going to show you an interval set that I've been using in my own training, that I've been programming for a lot of my clients and seeing some really good results. So I figured I'd share it with you and see if you plug it into your own training, if you get some similar results that I've been seeing. Now, the thing that's important to remember when it comes to interval training is that there is no magic interval set that takes you from zero to hero or from average to elite, and that's important to remember. I don't know if you guys are like me, but what I tend to do is I tend to look at the top athletes in particular sports, whether it's running, cycling, and I comb through their entire training programs. I look through all their Strava feeds, their Instagram posts, and I'm desperate to find that secret interval set, that secret workout that they're doing that is something that I've never seen before. And the funny thing is, when you look at these top endurance athletes, when you look at these pro runners, when you look at Tour de France cyclists, and you comb through their training, what you realize is there's really no secret workout that they're doing that's getting them to that world class or top of their sport level. Like a great example is David Roach, who just won the Leadville 100, and he broke his own record by 15 minutes. He ran in like 15 hours, something ridiculous, averaging like a 9-minute mile, which is ridiculous. I just saw, like, in his training, one of his workouts was 4 sets of 5 minutes going hard up a hill. You see? That's nothing crazy. That's nothing mind-blowing. That's nothing that if you found out, you'd be like, oh my gosh, I've never, how? So remember, it's not one interval workout that makes or breaks your entire training. It's doing intervals week after week after week after week. And it's not one workout that gives you your gains. In fact, one workout does nothing. It's stacking 20 hard workouts, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 across years, right? So it's week after week, it's month after month of doing hard work, right? And doing the work. So I just want you to remember that, because it's so tempting to just keep searching and searching and searching. And people will often do an interval set once and then search for the next magic interval set. And I always say that to really see the magic and the intent and the gains from one interval set, you need to do it over and over and over again without changing much of the structure, right? That's how you can see that progressive overload, which is a receipt that you're actually progressing in your training, right? That your training is working. So I can't wait to show you guys this interval set. If you like this video, leave me a like. If you got a question about how to do the interval set, drop a comment. And if you think this would be helpful to someone else, click that share button. And if you haven't already, hit subscribe. So I call this DI intervals, which stands for descending interval. And it's a really awesome way of spending a lot of time near our maximal output, right? So our maximal output in an interval workout would be VO2 max work is going to be what you could do for about 12 minutes, right? I want you to picture, if I said run all out for 12 minutes, full out. Not a sprint, right? Because there's that next level. When it comes to running and cycling, when we go like all out or hard, there is that, like I said, people I think know the difference between going all out hard and like a sprint, right? Obviously, if you're sprinting, you're not making it more than a minute. So anyway, one of the main objectives of interval training is to do a lot of work at a high intensity. But when a lot of people set up their intervals, they set them up in a way that actually, over the course of the workout, they're spending less and less time at a higher intensity. So it's not that they didn't get some gains from it. It's not that they didn't get fitter. It's just they might not have got as many minutes at high intensity as they could have, right? And it might not seem like a big deal to get 12 minutes at high intensity versus 6, but over the course of a year, that's going to add up in terms of gains. So the DI intervals, which is descending intervals, is going to accomplish that using just a little bit of a trick where we're going to decrease how long the interval is, both with the rest and that. And what you should see is actually you should be able to pick up the pace just a smidge, right? So each interval you're going to pick up the pace just a smidge because the interval's not lasting as long. Now, for a lot of people, I think a lot of people don't realize how much building your aerobic base and having good endurance, the better your aerobic base is, the more intervals you can do, and the less time between intervals you're able to take. So that's important, because you'll see a lot of people who are trying to get their mile and a half faster, their 2 mile faster, maybe run a fast 5K or half marathon, and they're doing like mile repeats. Now, nothing wrong with that. But what you've got to realize is, if you don't have a big base, if you're not running like 50, 60, 70, 80 miles per week, and you don't have a good endurance base, maybe you're only doing 4 to 5 hours of cardio a week, to spend a mile or potentially 6 minutes straight or 8 minutes straight at high intensity for a lot of people is actually not manageable. They can't hold that high enough pace because they don't have the bottom up aerobic system to hold them up there. So they end up going up there, and then they can't sustain that interval after interval after interval. So like I said, they end up spending less time at a higher percentage max. So let's go into the workout, and I'm not going to, like I said, I don't want this to seem complex and crazy because it's a very simple workout. So what we're going to do is we're going to do our warm-up run, or our slog, right? Slow jog. Slog, some people call it the Kenyan trot. Just your warm-up. And then what we're going to do is we're going to do that for about 10 minutes, okay? So we're going to just warm up for about 10 minutes. Cool? Sweet. So then after 10 minutes, what we're going to do is we're going to do a mini ramp. What is a mini ramp? Now, this is really common in cycling workouts, especially cycling intervals, but it's less common in running. And the idea behind this is just to go from 0 to 100. Unless you're Drake, you can't do that, right? You can't go 0 to 100 real quick. We actually want to go 0 to 50 to 70 to 90, and to give our body the opportunity to taste that intensity, because we won't have that many minutes at high intensity, so we want to be able to hit those effectively. And I like to compare it to a heavy deadlift. Let's say you have the capability to deadlift 400 pounds. Even if you could deadlift 400 pounds, very few people would just walk into the gym, put 400 pounds in the bar, and pull it. Even though they have that potential, they're going to probably put 135 on, get a couple touches, 225, 315, and just bounce their way up. And that allows the system that ramp up. So for our mini ramp, after we're done running 10 minutes, easy, right? Easy. What we're going to do is we're going to do a mini ramp, where for 2 minutes, we run easy. Then 2 minutes, we run medium. And then 2 minutes, we run hard. And then what we're going to do, so that would be 6 minutes, right? So that is 6 minutes more of running. And then what we're going to do is we're going to do a 5-minute recovery. Okay? Cool. So people are going to say, well, you know, what zones? Well, this would be obviously more like a zone 2, zone 3, zone 4, but you don't need to go crazy. And remember, you don't want to blow yourself up. You just want to taste that faster speed. You want to be smooth, efficient, and strong, right? And then we're going to do 5-minute recovery. Now, that recovery, you're welcome to walk. You're welcome to jog. Totally fine. It's not going to impact the workout that much. So we have our mini ramp. And then what we're going to get into is our first set of intervals. So we'll call this set 1. Okay? So the way this is going to work is we are going to have our first interval is going to be 3 minutes, and it's going to be very hard. Now, a lot of people are going to want to look at their heart rate for this. With these type of intervals, if you look at your heart rate, especially if you're not wearing a chest strap, the heart rate can lag and delay. And sometimes with the lag and delay, or just with these type of intervals, you're not going to be able to get to that like red line heart rate. And then you're going to think you're doing these interval runs, even though you're like, wow, I'm going really hard. So rely on rate of perceived exertion, or RPE, rather than heart rate. You can kind of glance down, but don't be a slave to this, just because the way these intervals are is the watch can lag, and then your heart rate says it's at 168, and it's not good. So anyway, you're going to 3 minutes hard, okay? Obviously, even though we're going very hard, I'm not sprinting, and I should not blow up. So we should not get a minute and a half in and have to slow up, or we blow up that means you have shot into, you're not going very hard, you are going sprint land, right? We can't sustain a sprint for over a minute. So if you are blowing up in a 3-minute interval, you have gone into sprint land, okay? So you're going to go 3 minutes hard, and then what we're going to do is we're going to have a shorter recovery, right? Because we want to make this a more aerobic workout. So instead of matching the time we spent working, we're going to have 2 minutes recovery. If you need to, you can walk this, but I would prefer a slow jog, okay? Now, what we're going to do is we've got the 2-minute recovery, and then next, because this is very hard, and like I said, most people don't have a strong enough aerobic system to spend that much time at high intensity, we're going to take away a third of the work so we can continue to run at that hard intensity. So then we're going to go 2 minutes very hard instead of 3. Right? So that is where we got our 2 minutes very hard, right? Then what we're going to do is we're going to have a minute. Remember, we're going to have a little bit less rest than work. So we're going to have a minute and 20 seconds, or a minute and 20 seconds recovery. And then what we're going to do is we're going to have a minute of very hard. Then we're going to have 40 seconds recovery. And then we're going to have 40 seconds. Oh, I'm running out very hard. Sorry, I'm running out of room here. And then the final one is going to be where we go 30-second recovery and then 30-second hard. So sorry, running out of room there. Okay, let's break that down again. This is the descending interval, right? So we warm up. We've got our quick little 6-minute ramp, little 5-minute recovery. This is a great time. By the way, this is where you should eat a gel. Grab carbs, your quick carbs. That's the best place to do that because your body's primed for it. Then we're going to go into 3 minutes very hard, 2 minutes recovery, 2 minutes very hard, 1 minute 20-second recovery. Wow, I did this wrong. 1 minute 20-second recovery. Man, guys, I messed up here. That's okay, right? This is why. Right. So then 1 minute 20-second hard. 1 minute recovery. Good thing I double checked my work, right? 1 minute recovery. We'll go down here. 40 seconds. 1 minute hard. 40-second recovery. 40-second hard. 30-second recovery. 30-second hard. Okay, my goodness. It's almost like you almost think that I haven't done this workout before. Okay, let's go over that again because that was ridiculous and I felt like an idiot. Glad that I double checked my work. Okay, 3 minutes very hard, 2 minutes recovery. 2 minutes very hard, 1 minute 20-second recovery. 1 minute 20-second hard, 1 minute recovery. 1 minute hard, 40-second recovery. 40-second hard, 30-second recovery, 30-second hard, interval set is done, right? It's going to be it's right around 8 minutes of work, right? Just a little above 8 minutes of work. And that is going to be our first set, okay? And then what we're going to do is if you're a beginner, honestly, that might be good enough for your first 3 times of doing this. So you might only do that for your first 3 workouts, right? Which is okay. So you might repeat this 3 times, and then what we're going to do is after repeating this interval set 3 times, we're going to have a 5-minute recovery. That can be walking or jogging. Another perfect time to eat a gel or carbs. And then what we're going to do is we're going to do set number 2, just like set number 1, okay? So nothing different, nothing changing. And then obviously I would do that for another 3 to 5 weeks. And then I would add a third set by just adding another 5-minute recovery and a third set of the same pattern. So the reason, once again, why this works well, why the DI intervals work so well is, once again, After 3 minutes hard, since most people's aerobic systems are not going to be able to fully recharge and recover, especially when we're recovering less than we're working, if we take off, like I said, you can see there's a 33% drop in the amount of work between our first and second hit, and then there's a 50%. There's another 50% drop off here, right? And then there's another 50% drop off between these 2 points. So what we're doing is we're allowing ourselves to stay at that high intensity. But what you should feel is that you should be able to keep and maintain the pace you're running at. In fact, actually, it's a little bit of a mental reward. So when you get to, when you get to the 1 minute hard, well, that's only a third of what you started at. So you should feel like you should be able to hit this pretty hard. I found that mentally, even though you are going at a very hard intensity and your recovery times are shrinking, I found that when I do these intervals, they don't feel as hard as other intervals, even though, if you end up doing 2 to 3 sets, you're going to be spending, 16 to 24 minutes at a very high intensity, even though your rate of perceived exertion feels a little bit lower than if you did a traditional like 5 by 5 minutes or like a 3 by 20 minute longer intervals. So guys, this is going to be your descending intervals. Once again, warm up, ramp, make sure you're eating carbs and gels on your 5-minute recoveries. You're going to need that to stay at high intensity. And yeah, guys, I've had really good success with this. I don't want to call it a rule, but I'll say that we start with 1 set and we do that for a minimum of 3 weeks, right? Minimum. Some people, they need 4 to 5 weeks. Until we own this, we're not going to add a second set, right? Once we own where we're able to do that much work, then we can add a second set, and then you can think of them like steps of a ladder. So we can add a second set and do that for another 3 to 6 weeks, even longer, and then add a 4th set. I find this taps out when you get to about 5 sets. So in terms of like, for me, once I get to doing 5 sets of work, that's nearing like 60 minutes of like threshold work, which is near the limit of what you'd want to do in a single session before you start to just make the recovery demands just like crazy, right? Because remember, when it comes to training, it's not about if you can do the work, because most people can do the work. It's just that they're not willing to. But the second part of that is it's not about can you do the work, because most people can if they actually just did it. It's what's the recovery cost. Now, for an average person who's not training for, like a race, or who's just trying to stay healthy, we don't need to really get into that, because it's going to sort itself out in the wash. For a higher end athlete who's got to worry about like getting all the work in, who maybe is training 15 to 20 hours a week or 25 hours a week, then we have to ask ourselves, how does this impact the rest of my week? And what I found with this interval set is you get to spend a ton of time in intensity, but it feels like 20%-ish less miserable than other interval sets, even though if you do the numbers, you're spending just as much time there. So I want you guys to try this in your workouts. I've done it biking. I've done it on the stair stepper. I've done it running, and I find it incredibly effective across all those. I'm sure you can do it swimming also. Try it out. Don't rush to adding too many sets. Focus on going hard during the hard. And remember, you should not blow up. If you're on a minute hard or a minute 22nd and halfway through you blow up, you're not going hard, you're sprinting, okay? And that's a big important thing to realize. And then start adding a second set. So if you end up using this, just let me know how it goes. If you like this video, like I said, share it with a friend or give it a like. And then I will see you guys in the next one.